first to introduce myself, I'm Viller, the founder CEO here at SingleKey. We kind of really got this business up and running about 5 years ago, really with the aim of protecting landlords from renters that don't pay rent, damage your property, and ultimately make sure that you always get your rent check at the end of the month. So you can always cover your mortgage payments and property expenses, even if the tenant defaults for whatever reason. So today I'll cover two things. First of all, I'm excited to announce some new features. And then later on in the presentation, we'll talk a bit about some of our rent guarantee demand and claims. And you should get a sense of kind of what that looks like as well. So first things first, we're continuing to invest very heavily in really upgrading our infrastructure for having the best tenant screening due diligence tool out there available for small homeowners like yourselves. And we're constantly adding new features. So a couple of new ones are the co-applicant invites, the tenant portal, and the international credit check. Quickly share my screen if you don't mind, just so I can kind of show some of these things in action. So right now I'm on my report or my tenant portal or my landlord portal. And I've run a number of reports. Recently, this spring, we actually added the ability to run both Equifax as well as TransUnion reports. And now we even have what's called a dual report, which is pretty cool. For those of you who are not aware, a dual report basically combines both Equifax and TransUnion to offer you data from both credit bureaus. The reason this is important is that we discovered that especially collection agencies or trade lines only report to one bureau, not both, because it's a lot of work to set up both connections to both credit bureaus. So that means that, if you're only running one credit check, you could potentially be missing some real red flags from renters. So especially if there's a collection or bankruptcy being reported to the other bureau that you don't have access to. And in many cases, we notice that credit scores differ significantly depending on whether or not they caught those red flags. So in this case, for example, Mary, our current example tenant here, has a 700 Equifax credit score, but on TU, they have a 600 credit score because they actually found a lot more issues. So debts and collections, bankruptcies, and legal items on file. Right? And then on page one, we even show you the difference between the two. So in this case, hey, this person, we've registered more monthly payments, a higher debt load. So we found trade lines that didn't exist on Equifax. And we found that there's a lot more warning signs. Lastly, the cool thing about this now is that you actually have access to both credit reports. As you scroll down past the rental application and go to the Equifax report, you'll see the credit bureaus for both the Equifax report, credit score, the debt payments, the summary, the trade lines. And then you can proceed to the TU right after that. So you really get a lot more information with this dual report. You can click through all the trade lines. So you can see now we've got quite a few more trade lines for TransUnion compared to Equifax. And we also got a few bankruptcies and collection data that we didn't have on the previous bureau. So it is a great way to kind of just make sure you get the full picture, make sure you don't miss any red flags to enable you to make the right decision when you're approving a tenant for the lease. So that was one of our product updates. Another really cool thing, guys, is that we find that about 20% of our rental applications, typically it's a couple applying together, right? So to make that process even easier, we've built what's called the co-applicant invite. So when the rental application gets sent to the tenant, let's say John is our primary applicant. John adds Sally as their co-signer. Now, Sally, we can actually send her an automated invite to do a rental application as well. So both of them will be invited to actually do a credit check automatically. John has the option to kind of uncheck that. If he doesn't want her to get an invite to do a credit check, they can disable it. But this way you can make sure that all adults in the property can actually get invited to do a credit check. So to make sure you're not missing any important credit data that you should have access to. And then lastly, if there's a co-signer, we can also automatically send them an invite to also do a credit check. So you can get the full financial history for that co-signer as well. So what will happen now is that the co-signer will get an invitation. They will appear as a different user on the portal. So if this is my primary applicant and I click on the primary applicant and I scroll down to the occupant section under my rental application, which would be right there, I can see that the primary applicant here has added a first co-applicant and a second co-applicant as well as a co-signer. So the cool thing about this now is that, hey, if these other folks have actually already run a report, I can click here and go directly to that report, and I can see how the different folks are linked together. So if I just hover over this, that'll take me back to the co-applicant, to the primary applicant report, right? And I have the ability to, if the co-applicant, so in this case, the first co-op was sent an invite, they completed the rental application and we ran the report and we made it available to you right away automatically. But the second co-op has gotten the invite, but they haven't completed it yet, right? And you even have the option to invite them directly from the co-applicant or occupant kind of flow. So, it is a bit more of a nuanced kind of a conversation, but it is something that it really can help a lot of small lenders as well as property managers automate and make sure that they can easily get the full picture from every adult in the property or in the lease, and easily be able to kind of figure out who is applying together. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that if you do go back to the index page, you're trying to figure out, okay, well, hey, I just ran a bunch of reports now. I'm confused. Who's applying together? Who's not? Well, there's a couple of different ways. First, you can just look at the address and you can notice that these 3 applicants have applied together to 88 Hyde Park. And if you actually hover over these, you can see that, hey, the first co-op was actually invited by the primary applicant, and the second co-op was also invited by the primary applicant, and you get a sense of who are the folks that are applying together on the same lease. So again, a step forward to make the process of screening tenants much easier and more comprehensive. The last thing I wanted to mention, a new feature that we also brought to market recently is our tenant portal. So now what that means is that as a landlord, if I go ahead and actually run a report on Mary, and Mary goes, pays for that report during the invite, oftentimes the renters will call into SingleKey and say, hey, I paid for this credit report, can I have a copy? And we're obliged to share with them. Well, the good news is that now they don't have to call in anymore. They can automatically get a copy of their report by logging into our tenant portal. Mary will get an email to say, hey, thank you for completing your rental application. We've compiled the report, sent it to your landlord. By the way, if you'd like to get a copy of that report, just click here and create a SingleKey account, verify your identity, and you'll be able to get a free report, the report that you paid for. You'll have access to it in a secure manner. So this is a way to kind of make sure that tenants are getting some value out of this program as well, and be able to have access to their credit data.